Grand Central Station was alive in its usual chaos, a living river of people surging in every direction. The marble floors gleamed under the gold-filtered evening light. Pouring through the cathedral-high windows, announcements crackled over the loudspeakers, half swallowed by the thundering footsteps of commuters racing to trains. Luggage wheels clattered, voices overlapped, and the air carried the faint scent of roasted chestnuts. From a vendor near the doors, Alex Thornton moved through, it all like a man immune to the current. His stride was brisk, precise, every step calibrated. The cut of his navy suit spoke of bespoke tailoring. His tie was knotted with surgeon's precision. At 42, the CEO of Thornton Technologies had the same commanding presence in a train station as he did in a boardroom. He didn't so much walk as advance, cutting through the crowd with practiced indifference. His phone buzzed in his hand with an alert from his assistant. Tomorrow's merger documents were ready for review. It had been a long day. 12 hours of board meetings where projections mattered more than people. Just as his father had taught him, a car waited outside on Vanderbilt Avenue, engine running, and his schedule told him he would be home in exactly 18 minutes. Then he heard it at first. It was faint, a thread of sound weaving its way through the noise. So delicate he thought he imagined it. Then it grew clearer, a sequence of piano notes that cut through the chaos with aching clarity. The melody was neither frantic nor polished for performance. It was alive, fragile, intimate, like sunlight breaking through a sky heavy with rain. Alex stopped. A businessman behind him muttered something sharp, skirting around his motionless frame, but Alex barely noticed. The melody struck something in him he couldn't name, an old, half-forgotten ache. He'd heard this piece before, or something like it, years ago in another life, before the years of deals and deadlines, before the armor he wore had fused. To the man underneath, he found himself turning toward the sound, moving without intention, his gaze scanning the busy concourse. He passed a knot of tourists, a shoe-shine stand, a news vendor calling out headlines, and then he saw her. She sat on a folding chair near the West Concourse, small and still in the restless tide of bodies, a battered electronic keyboard balanced. On a stand in front of her, her fingers moved with precise grace, coaxing life out of plastic keys that should have sounded hollow, but didn't. She couldn't have been more than 9. A cascade of auburn hair framed her pale face, catching the gold of the fading sunlight. Beside her, a glass jar held a handful of bills and coins. Few people even glanced her way, hurrying on to their destinations. Then she looked up. Alex felt something inside him shift, an almost imperceptible jolt that left him unsteady. Her eyes, a starling blue, clear as glacial water, locked on his. They were familiar in a way that made his chest tighten, as if he were staring into a mirror that reflected not age and cynicism, but a version of himself he'd never met. The crowd flowed between them, but Alex didn't move. The music continued, each note pulling him closer to something he couldn't yet name, and wasn't sure he was ready to face. The melody followed Alex long after the last note faded. He stood there, rooted, as the girl's small fingers rested lightly on the keys. The final chord humming in the air before dissolving into the noise of the station. People passed, without a second glance, but Alex felt as if the world had shifted slightly off its axis. He forced himself to move. His driver would be waiting. There were calls to make, contracts to sign. Logic demanded he keep walking, but logic was a poor match for whatever had just happened. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor, carrying him toward the West Concourse. Yet his mind wasn't in sync with his body. It was still back there, with the girl and the song. Something, maybe curiosity, maybe something more dangerous, made him stop again and turn around. She was still there, head tilted slightly, lips pressed together in concentration as she began a new piece, not the same haunting melody, but something just as intricate. His eyes flicked to the jar at her side, a few crumpled singles, some coins, a folded Metro card. It didn't belong here, he thought, the music or the girl. He approached, drawing a few curious glances from passers-by. Up close, the keys of her instrument were worn smooth in places, faint gray smudges marking years of use, a cable snaked to a small portable speaker. The sound improbably rich for such modest equipment. She noticed him and paused, her hands still, hovering above the keys. "You play beautifully," he said, his voice carrying more warmth than he intended. "Thank you, sir." Her voice was small, but it didn't waver. She spoke like someone used to talking to strangers without flinching. "That was Claire de Lune. My mom taught me." Alex hesitated, the name of the piece sparking an image, a dimly lit apartment. A woman's silhouette bent over a piano, her hair spilling forward as she played. "Your mom must be very talented," he managed. "She went to Juilliard." The girl's tone was proud, almost defiant. Then, as if she'd practiced the words before, she added, "She's sick. I'm helping with her medicine money." It was matter of fact, not self-pitying, something twisted deep inside him. He slipped his hand into his wallet and placed $100 bill in the jar. Her eyes widened just enough to betray surprise, but she quickly recovered. "That's very generous." He found himself smiling faintly. "What's your name?" "Lily. Lily Matthews." The surname hit him like a cold current. It lodged somewhere between his ribs and heart, dredging up the memory of a letter he'd never opened and a goodbye that hadn't felt final. Before he could respond, a sharp voice came over the loudspeaker announcing a delayed train, and the moment fractured. Lily looked past him, scanning the crowd as though searching for someone. "Is your mom here?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. Lily shook her head. "She's resting. I come here after school. People get more during rush hour." He studied her for a moment longer, sensing layers to this situation he couldn't see yet, and for the first time in years, Alex Thornton's carefully ordered world felt unpredictable. When he finally walked away, her music trailed him, following him out into the cold Manhattan evening like a ghost that had found his name. The next morning, Alex told himself it was just another work day. Numbers, meetings, decisions. But when the sun dipped below the skyline and his driver asked where to take him, the answer surprised even him. Grand Central, the city's evening. Rush was a living tide, spilling into the station with its familiar blend of energy and exhaustion. Alex scanned the West Concourse as soon as he stepped inside, ignoring the puzzled look from a man he nearly brushed past. The spot where Lily had been the night before sat empty. The folding chair was gone. The battered keyboard was nowhere in sight. He stood there a moment longer than he meant to, telling himself this was irrational. She was just a girl he'd met by chance, but the air felt different without that ribbon of music threading through it. The hum of the station seemed emptier. He turned slowly, searching faces, half expecting her to emerge from the crowd with that same calm, steady gaze. Nothing. The street performer nearby strummed a guitar with more enthusiasm than skill. Alex dropped a 20 in his case and asked casually, "You seen a little girl play piano here?" "Auburn hair, maybe 9 years old." The man squinted. "Yeah, sometimes, not every day. She's good, better than anyone I've heard down here. Haven't seen her since Monday, though today was Thursday." A flicker of unease moved through him. "She come here with someone," the guitarist shrugged. "Usually alone. Sometimes a lady picks her up, real pale, looks sick." The description made Alex's stomach knot. He left before the man could ask more questions. He spent the next evenings passing through Grand Central. Always the same story. Lily's corner stayed empty. Each time, the station felt a little colder, the echoes a little sharper. He tried to focus on work, but the melody she played kept intruding into his thoughts, so persistent that he caught himself humming fragments of it in the middle of a meeting. By the fourth night, he made a decision. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was something heavier, something personal. Alex went to a coffee shop overlooking the concourse and took a seat by the window. If she came, he would see her die an hour past. Commuters surged and dwindled. A train announcement boomed and faded, just as he began to think she wouldn't come at all. Movement caught his eye. There she was, the folding chair, the keyboard, the jar. He rose and walked down before he could second-guess himself. This time, he stayed far enough back to listen before she noticed him. She was playing something new, slower, darker, each note heavy, deliberate, as if she were pouring her whole weight into the sound. When she finally looked up and saw him, a flicker of recognition crossed her face, but she didn't smile. "You came back," she said quietly, as if it were both a statement and a question. "I did," he replied. "I wanted to hear you again." Something in her posture shifted, the tiniest stiffening. She glanced toward the crowd. "You shouldn't wait for me. Some days I can't be here." He almost asked why, but there was a guardedness in her eyes now, and in that instant, Alex knew this wasn't just about a little girl playing piano for pocket change. There was a story here, one tangled deep enough to pull him in whether he liked it or not. Alex stayed longer that evening, leaning against a marble pillar while Lily played. Her music wasn't polished in the way conservatory students performed. It was raw, unfiltered. The kind of playing that made people forget where they were. Even the businessman who had been barking into his phone earlier had stopped to listen for a few moments. When she finally paused, Alex stepped closer. "Do you take requests?" She tilted her head. "Sometimes, something by Chopin," he asked her. Lips curved just slightly, the barest ghost of a smile. "I know the nocturnes. My mom taught me those too." "Your mom must be proud," he said. "Careful with his tone, she is," Lily replied. "But the words came with a shadow. When she's well enough to hear me." That shadow stayed in her eyes. As she began another piece, Alex waited until the last note faded before asking, "What's your mom's name?" She looked at him for a long beat, as though deciding whether he deserved the answer. "Elena Matthews." The name slammed into him like a fist to the sternum. For a moment, the noise of Grand Central dissolved into a dull roar in his ears. He saw her again, Elena, 20 years younger, in a dimly lit jazz bar downtown. Her hands flying over the piano keys like a storm-given shape, the warmth of her laugh, the way she had looked at him as if she could see past every defense. And then the abrupt end. No calls, no letters, no explanation, just gone. He had told himself he'd moved on, and yet here he was, standing in front of a child with Elena's hair in his own eyes, his heart beating unevenly. Alex forced his voice steady. "She still teaches?" Lily shook her head. "She's sick. Has been for a while." "How sick?" Her small fingers toy with a chip key on the keyboard. "The kind where she can't work. The kind where the doctors use words I can't spell." He felt the weight of that answer settle like a stone in his chest. "Does your dad help?" The question came out sharper than he meant. Lily's gaze hardened. "Mom says he didn't want us, so no." There was no malice in her voice, only the simple clarity of a fact she believed to be true. Alex swallowed, the air thick around him. He wanted to ask 100 questions. "Where do you live? How long have you been playing here?" But before he could, Lily began to pack her things. "Sorry," she said. "I have to get home. My mom's waiting." He didn't stop her, just watched as she folded her chair, tucked the keyboard under her arm, and disappeared into the crowd. Alex remained in the spot long after she was gone, his mind spinning. The pieces didn't just fit, they locked into place with a precision that left no room for doubt. Elena Matthews hadn't vanished without reason. She left carrying something far more important than he had ever imagined, and Alex Thornton, a man who thought he had control over every corner of his life, realized for the first time in years that he was completely, utterly powerless. That night, Alex didn't go home. His driver circled Midtown twice before he told him to stop at a late-night diner near Lexington. He sat at the counter, untouched coffee cooling in front of him, his mind a mess of jagged thoughts. Elena Matthews. The name wasn't just a ghost from his past. It was flesh and blood, breathing somewhere in this city, raising a daughter who carried his eyes. He didn't need proof. He already knew, but knowing wasn't enough. By midnight, he made a decision. He would find them. The next day, between a board meeting and a lunch with investors, he called in a favor from a man who used to do private security for his company. A man who knew how to find people without leaving a trail. By evening, Alex had an address. Queens. An old brick building on a narrow street. The kind of place where the city's noise faded into the quiet hum of tired lives. He went there. The next night, long after the street lamps had clicked on from across the street, he saw a light burning in a second-floor window. Curtains hung loosely, leaving a gap just wide enough for him to see inside. The sight hit him harder than he was ready for. Lily sat at an upright piano that had seen better decades, her small frame almost swallowed by the bench. The wood was scratched, a few keys yellowed, but the sound, even muted through glass, carried something beautiful. Beside her, in a worn armchair, sat Elena. She was thinner than he remembered, her skin pale under the lamplight, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Every so often, she coughed into a tissue, but her eyes, those same warm, intelligent eyes, never left Lily's hands. When Lily finished, Elena clapped softly, then leaned forward to kiss her daughter's head. Alex gripped the cold metal, railing in front of him, 100 things tearing through him at once: regret, guilt, anger at himself, and something deeper he hadn't felt in years: longing. He wanted to walk across the street, up those stairs, knock on the door. He wanted to tell her everything that he hadn't known, that if he had, nothing could have kept him away. But another part of him, the part that had survived corporate wars and boardroom betrayals, knew this wasn't a conversation to start on a doorstep. He stayed there until the light went out and the window went dark dot. By the time he got back into the car, a plan was already forming. He didn't just want to see them again. He wanted to step into their lives, not as a stranger, but as something more. He just didn't know yet if Elena would ever let him. The next week, Alex returned to Grand Central every evening, not to catch a train, not even to hear the music, but to wait. Lily didn't play every night. Some evenings she never showed, and he'd stand among the crowd and tell it thin, telling himself he wasn't disappointed. But on the night she did appear, he watched from a distance, leaning against the edge of the concourse, hands in his pockets. As her fingers moved over the keys like they were born there, he learned her rhythm. The way she'd start with something slow, then build into pieces that caught the attention of even the most hurried commuters. He noticed how she'd scan a crowd for a familiar face that never came, then straighten her back and play anyway. And then, one Thursday, she wasn't alone. He spotted her before the music began, Lily, hauling her keyboard through the flow of commuters, and next to her, a woman in a pale blue coat, moving slower than the rest. Every step measured. Elena. Alex's breath caught before his mind could reason with him. She was older, yes, there was a fragility to her now, a pallor in her cheeks, but she was still Elena, the woman who had once looked at him like he was more than his father's son, the woman he had let slip through his fingers. They sat up in the corner where Lily always played. Elena didn't sit far away this time. She settled into a folding chair a few feet from her daughter, hands clasped in her lap. Watching as Lily began to play, Alex's pulse was unsteady. He could walk over right now, step into their little circle, and end the questions that had been eating at him. He could see her reaction, hear her voice again, but his legs felt rooted to the marble floor. The music swelled. Commuters slowed. Coins and bills landed in the jar, and then, in the middle of a piece, Lily glanced toward her mother. A small, silent check-in, and Elena smiled at her. It wasn't the kind of smile people gave out of politeness. It was soft, unguarded, full of love. It hit Alex harder than he expected. That was his daughter she was smiling at. His daughter. When the set ended, Lily reached for her water bottle, and Elena bent to say something to her. The crowd shifted, and for the first time, Elena's eyes lifted, scanning the space around them, and then they found him. It was less like recognition and more like a blow. Her gaze froze, narrowed, and he saw it. The moment she knew, Elena straightened, her body tensing despite the effort it cost her. She said something to Lily, quick and low. The girl's brow furrowed, but she obeyed. Bending to pack up her things, Alex stepped forward, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Elena, he said, his voice cutting through the station noise. She looked at him for a long second, then stood. Not here. Her voice was soft, but sharp enough to slice through steel. Lily looked between them, confused. Mom, who? Not here. Lily, Elena said again, her tone leaving no room for argument. The air between them was thick with 10 years of unspoken history, and Alex knew. The next words they exchanged would either break everything apart or start to stitch it back together. That night, they didn't speak in the station. Elena led Lily away without another glance. Vanishing into the crowd like smoke, Alex followed, not too close, but close enough to see them emerge on 42nd Street, where the cold bit harder and the yellow glow of taxis bled into the wet pavement. They stopped at a bus stop. Elena kept one hand on Lily's shoulder, as if to anchor her, the other clutching the strap of her bag. She didn't look back. The bus came. They got on. Alex didn't hesitate. He flagged a cab, told the driver to follow the bus. The ride wasn't long. In Queens, the bus hissed to a stop, and mother and daughter stepped off. Alex paid the driver and stepped into the street. He followed them to the same brick building he watched from across the road days earlier. This time, he crossed it. At the top of the narrow stairwell, he could hear their voices, muffled, low, Lily's softer, Elena's tight with fatigue, then the sound of a door clicking shut. He stood there for several seconds, his hand hovering over the wood, and then he knocked. The silence on the other side was sharp enough to cut. A lock clicked. and the door opened just enough for Elena to fill the gap. She looked smaller up close, paler, too. The scarf around her neck did little to hide the gauntness in her face. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "You recognized me," Alex replied, his voice steady despite the storm. Inside him, her jaw tightened. "Of course I recognized you. Some people you don't forget, no matter how much you try." "I didn't know," he said quickly, "about her, Elena. I swear to you, that's convenient." She cut in, her voice low but seething. "You didn't know. That makes it better, right? That wipes it all away." He shook his head. "No, but I want to make it right." Her laugh was soft, bitter. "Make it right, Alex. You don't just show up after a decade and decide to be a hero." Behind her, a small voice interrupted. "Mom?" Lily was standing in the doorway to a tiny living room, wearing an oversized hoodie, her hair pulled into a loose braid. She looked at Alex, then at her mother. "Who is he?" Elena hesitated. It was only a fraction of a second, but in that space, Alex realized something. She hadn't told Lily anything. Not his name, not his existence. "I'm an old friend," he said, the light tasting like metal. Lily tilted her head, studying him with those impossibly familiar eyes. "You look like me," she said. The observation so simple it made his throat tighten. Elena stepped between them. "Lily, go finish your homework." Lily lingered, but obeyed, disappearing into the other room. Elena turned back to him, her voice barely more than a whisper now. "She doesn't need the truth tonight, and I'm not sure she'll ever need it from you." Alex met her gaze. "I'm not walking away, Elena. Not this time." Her eyes flickered, and for just a heartbeat, he thought he saw the woman he'd once known. The one who had believed in him before he became what he was. But then the mask returned. "Then you'd better be ready for a fight," she said, and shut the door in his face. Alex stood there in the hallway, the weight of her words sinking into him like cold rain. Somewhere in the apartment beyond that door, his daughter was finishing her homework, unaware her entire life had just shifted. In the shadows, and he knew the real battle was only beginning.